Hello everyone and welcome back to Sharp Cuts. My name is Garrett May alongside Josh Nickel. As always, welcome back to the show. I'm eager to go today. We got an excellent guest, well-rounded, came highly recommended from friend of the show. So not to mount too much pressure, but we got Olivier Yanini on the show today. Did I pronounce your name correctly, Olivier? Because, I mean, we need to work on our français here on the channel.
Actually, the first name was right. The last name was not. So it's Janini. So it's a J, pronounced as a J.
Janine.
No need to put any sort of,
Welcome to the show. You're immediately getting the sense of the show here is how we just on purpose mispronounce our guest name just to unsettle things a little bit. I wish it was on purpose. So, Josh, normally we like to start out with comments and stuff and things we get from our viewers. We got nothing today. We have absolutely nothing to talk about, so that's incredibly disappointing. We're putting on a bad example here for our guests, so I'm ready to get right into it. You haven't said a single word yet, Josh, and we're going to try to keep it that way as normal. No, don't even breathe into the mic, Josh. You watch it. So first thing I wanted to talk about today, and Olivier, get your thoughts on as well, is Volleyball Canada has kind of announced and upcoming, actually after the show airs, it will have happened, is a VC Combine for youth club athletes, where they're bringing a bunch of kids age 14 to 18 to the beautiful city of Vaughan, Ontario. Nothing against Vaughan, but not sure if many of our listeners have heard of that. It's near Toronto to kind of test their physical skills. And I'm not going to say my opinion right away to not muddy the waters, but just got some thoughts around, this kind of a first of its kind. What do we think about it? I'll get maybe your take, Olivier, to start on the VC Combine.
Yeah, I think that's a very good topic. So, first off, as a former athlete myself, I would have loved to do that. Growing up, we all watch, let's say football, soccer, hockey, whatever it is. And, most of those sports, basketball as well, most of those sports have some sort of combine, whatever it is, whether it is through an all-star game or through, just, tryouts for the league itself. So growing up that way, it gives us, the feeling that it's a great way to get to the next level.
Yeah. Are you sure you're not saying that because you would have dominated the physical testing? I mean, you could jump out of the gym back in the day. I think you would have liked it because you could have showed off. Am I wrong?
Oh, no, you're totally right. What funny thing? Funny thing is,
you're right. I am incredibly physical. Thanks, Gary.
I mean, is it truth? You know it. We know it. It's it's all part of it. But funny thing is, when I was in high school, I was told that before my time there were hitting competition, basically, during which people would bounce balls and they would get prizes during national championships. And to my disappointment, when I got to nationals, that was not a thing anymore. That probably happened once or twice before our time. So yes, I would have loved to do that. So yes, I think it's a great idea for that reason. And yes, in terms of competition, in terms of what athletes would like to do, I feel like it would have been just great and perfect. And again, just a great way to get your step in higher level volleyball.
One of the only people I've met, or the first people I've met, who actually likes the idea of physical testing. Josh, I don't every year, man, we were on the national team on beach, maybe because I was on the beach. I never did really much of this indoors, but every year you come in there, they get the Vertec machine out, they get the little sensors out, you're doing the sprint thing, you got to do the bench. One year we did a 1 rep max bench. I was incredibly embarrassed that year, I mean, for obvious reasons, but everybody seemed to hate it then. Maybe it's because everybody was already on the team. I guess maybe the idea is for these kids who are kind of aspiring, super keen, let's get in there and show some physicality.
Yeah, I think for aspiring kids, it's amazing, right? And I mean, to me, most of those tests were naturally easy. So yes, of course, that was
no big deal. They were naturally easy. Yeah, naturally good.
A great way to show off. Yeah, a great way to show off. A great way to intimidate other people as well. Before tryouts and all of that. So yeah, I actually enjoyed those tests.
Yeah, well, damn. I think I would say my opinion is I'm incredibly weirded out by it. So I'm kind of glad we're maybe a little bit difference of opinion here, because it just weirds me the hell out to think about a 14-year-old kid. And you think about a 14-year-old guy or girl, doesn't matter, a kid who's 14 years old. They just played their 14U provincial championship or whatever. They're still in the early part of the club season. They go and they're doing they're measuring height, weight, and their jump. Think about that age what your spike touch would have been compared to even just 2 years later at 16 years old, right? Like, it changes immensely. Like, we had guys on our team who at 14 were like 5'2", and then at 16 we're all of a sudden 6'1", like grew a foot in that time. So like, what are you getting out of doing this for the 14-year-old kids? And for the 18U kids, I kind of get it. I think that's probably the only demographic I kind of get, because then university coaches kind of look at it and go, all right, I'm getting some stats, some data for this athlete that I can trust. They all did the same thing. That makes sense. But to me, 14 to 17U makes absolutely no sense. Now, Josh, you've literally said nothing for the first 5 minutes of the episode. I'm wondering if you're ever going to contribute to this conversation.
Yeah, no, I can jump in here. I was just enjoying the company, Garrett. I was enjoying the thoughts.
That's absolute nonsense. You were not.
This kind of reminds me a little bit like a big thing in the sporting community is the RBC training ground right now. And I think that works for a lot of sports. Garrett, it's where athletes just go and they're tested on like physical abilities, but it's not sport specific. And
Don't call me out and say Garrett. It's for the listener, the listener as well needs to know.
Listener. So that's a program here in Canada, and you go and you do like physical testing, but it's not very sport specific. And I have found just in recent history, the sports that require like an engine, like you're talking like cycling, bobsled, like stuff where you just need to be like physically special, like a lot of power, a lot of speed, they've been plucking athletes. And I think our Olympic programs have been doing well by identifying these athletes. And I was always kind of like, yeah, RBC training ground is good, but we're a ball sport. We're very technical. We're very this, we're that. So maybe this is kind of the middle ground where if these are going to be more volleyball specific tests, then maybe you can identify some athletes who showcase well. But I still think at the end of the day, Garrett, we're a ball control sport. And I think coaches should be in the gym identifying athletes. I don't know if a volleyball combine would make me want to like fast track somebody on the pathway. Yes, it's more data. Yes, it's more information. And maybe this is a thing. But to me, the missing link here is if Olivier goes and he dominates and he does the test, what's the step after that? Like, are you getting a physical training program where you can do this? Like, are they just going to say, wow, you touched this, but like, is there a way to improve it or maintain it? Or is it just a way to show off and you get a certificate and say, hey, at 17, he was the highest jumper, but like, do we know what he did at 18?
Two things. First, that is some excellent fence sitting right there. I mean, Olivier, you're getting a masterclass in sitting on the fence right there. I mean, well done, Josh. Get over that. Come on, let's pick a side here, bud. Second thing, you said, does the guy who's the best get put on a training program? I'm not thinking about that guy. I'm thinking about the person who goes and is the worst. Like, is the worst at all skills. Are we like, hey, like we need to get this person into the physical training skills?
So, Garrett, when you led OUA and were a top guy in U Sports in volleyball skills like, kills, attack efficiency, were you the highest jumper in the league?
No, I'm pretty sure it was Olivier. Definitely wasn't me.
You probably weren't the highest jumper on your team.
Okay, listen, we don't need to go into how I was so not physically dominant, okay? I mean, or are you taking a shot and saying the reason I don't like it is because I wouldn't have done well at it, and that's the reason why Olivier likes it?
I just think sometimes these tests are eye-opening and they're awesome. It's good feedback for athletes, but like, I don't think everyone does well, and that doesn't mean they're not good at their sport. Like Tom Brady's combine story is almost a joke, like how ridiculous that is. It doesn't mean once he put pads on, he was a really good football player. So if an athlete dominates these tests, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a good volleyball player, but it is feedback and it is data, and it's
okay,
something
so
new in our
who's
sport.
excited about this though? Like,
I
who's
imagine
energized?
some kids are fired up. Like I imagine some kids.
One thing to see about that is that you're giving, kind of edging examples of athletes that have done very well despite their, them not being that physical. But if you look at, kind of most of the athletes that are doing well, I'm sure that by gathering data, as you said, we would be able to kind of identify, elements that would lead to, great potential on, on a long-term basis. Second thing, a volleyball combine, I mean, you have to adapt it to the sport, right? So why not include technical aspects, as a part of it, right? You include, passing, and which I would, definitely not do well at.
I didn't say it. I mean, I wasn't going to say it.
I brought it up. So you would include passing and, stuff like, setting and whatnot. And, you include that as well as, more specific tests that could basically test, the ability, for someone to get better with time. But truth is, those first combines would not be good. With time, you refine it, you add stuff, you remove stuff, and then you analyze that data. But then again, it's kind of a long-term plan, right? but it's all about data.
I mean, interesting points you're bringing. I never pegged you for a numbers guy about collecting the data. Josh, you should like that. That should be a point that just is convincing you. Like, I feel like he's working hard to get you on his side here. Is it working?
I think it's working. I think, like I said, Gary, it's something new in our sport, and it's something to get the kids excited. There has to be another step for this other than like a really cool way to spend a Saturday and learn that a young Garrett may touch 10-8, but could still side out. Like
10-9 at least. Come on, you got to give me. So it's funny you mentioned as well, Olivia, touching on new, like, you know, the first one's not going to be great, but the more you do it, you're going to learn the tests that are going to maybe actually be more representative. So the first few years of, like, I guess the most formal beach volleyball national program we had when Leonard Krapp was the head coach, and he was, you know, he really stressed, we kind of the same thing, like we need to get the physical testing. And there were a few tests in there over the first 3 to 4 years that were like kind of the experimental tests, right? I think some are still around, but one of them that I remember was hilarious, Josh, and it's gone now. It's well gone. Well, actually 2 of them. So the first one was there was like 10 hurdles in a row. Do you still do this? And you just had to jump over them in a row. Like 10 times.
If you had to guess, how high was the hurdle?
That was like, it was probably a meter high. Like, it was pretty high. You did like full jump tuck to get over, but you couldn't turn sideways. Like, you couldn't, because it was easier if you went sideways, but they didn't let you do that. So you just go straight over. And then, but like 90% of people did it. Like, there was no, so that one we threw out. But the one that was funniest was, the CSIO, the Canadian Sport Institute Ontario, had these like tech things, and they were like lights on a pole, and you did like a fast feet down the sand, and then as you went through a sensor, the light flashed red or green, and you had to go left or right, and then do some fast feet again, then come back, and then you did it a second time, and then they timed you over that process, and it was just so strange and hilarious because like people go in the opposite way and just still going. Like, what do? They went the wrong way. Like, are they disqualified? Or like people falling over because they're like going the wrong way. Like, it was just a bit of a disaster. So I'm thankful to see that one was gone. So, but you're right. There's probably some better tests we could find that could stand the test of time.
Well, if they're going to stand the test of time, I think the important thing is that it is volleyball specific, because I noticed with our athletes too, Garrett, they start training to the test, but there are some items that if you do well in the test, that doesn't mean you're going to be good at volleyball. So I'm sure when somebody designed that fast feet, go left or right exercise, they're like, oh, it's cue reading, it's like digging a ball, it's like running. None of that correlates to actually digging like a high line roll. So like that doesn't apply to me, but somebody thought it did, right? They're always trying to like correlate something to something, where as long as this is like it transfers to the volleyball court, then I'm all in. If this is just something that's like a fun fact, like a
you're all in now. You started the episode sitting on the fence, and now you're all in. Olivia, you did it. You pulled him over onto your side.
When I was speaking to Leonard last year, we were just talking about we don't have like in volleyball, it's really hard to find a test to test the upper body. You mentioned one year you did a bench press. That probably doesn't apply. Some programs have done a medicine ball toss, but some athletes find a way to like cheat those drills where the medicine ball one, if you just throw it a little bit higher, it'll loop and it'll go further than the guy who throws the line drive, right? So the athletes are smart, Garrett, and they don't always want to work harder. They want to cheat the activity. So as a coach or someone reviewing... Yeah, exactly. So if we're going to review this data, we have to make sure that it was like equal and it's producing the results or feedback that you're going to then apply, right?
Yeah. One good point about that is, so to go back to the lights test, if you look at it and you make it, a bit easier, that would actually be a good test for younger people, because the issue with that test is that you did it way too late. There's no way that would apply to anyone at the age you had when you did it. But think about a young person doing that, let's say someone that's 13, 14, you test their reflexes, you test their ability to concentrate and a bunch of things like that. And while that person might not be good at volleyball yet, while you might not be able to test stuff like spike touch and other things like that, you can test the ability of that younger person to react to things, to be focused and a bunch of things like that, which on a long-term basis, and Garrett, that, right? And Josh, of course, being a good athlete is not only about being good at one thing. It's not only about being good at your sport. It's about a bunch of things, right? So if you're able to test those things that are not as concrete, not as obvious, I think you might be able to get something there. But then again, as you said, Josh, it's all about the follow-up, right? If you just do it and forget about it afterwards, it's worth nothing. You have to follow it with kids and kind of create somewhat of a program.
This is a first, Josh. I'm being convinced. You're watching it happen live. Olivier is selling me on the combine. And I'll tell you why. He's looking at it from a just bird's eye view perspective. And like, hey, if we do this year over year, you start to see trends of like, hey, what's the bare minimum you need to be at the level or to project to be at the level? And then we can get some sense there. You're going to find outliers, but at least you kind of have that. Or what's the top tier where we see actually a high percentage of kids who tested well in these areas? This is where they ended up. Like over the long term and for the administration, it does sound like a good idea. Like how I don't see how it's not. I was looking at it from an individual perspective, like, or a coach perspective, whereas like, I don't care at all about sending myself or one of my athletes or anything to this combine because like from that perspective, it means absolutely nothing. Right. So like, I kind of get that. And personally, I always hated it because some of the tests were extremely exhaustive. Like, you know, the beep test, for example. I don't know if our listeners know or don't know that one. That one's awful, right? Everybody hates that test. It's a pure exhaustion test. Volleyball. Yes. Like what? Like maybe a long rally test. Like, okay, how many quicks can you hit and then go block and then hit a quick? But like what do you max out at? How like take the longest rally ever. Okay, you could do that? Great. Like, do we care? Right? But it's true. The administrative, like, Josh, how are you not just so excited right now to have this guest on? And just, I feel like you guys are like on the same wavelength, man.
Well, for the listeners, Garrett, I didn't recruit this guest. I think we need to give a shout out to Carrie, who gave a recommendation and gave us basically there was no way we could say no. So the shout out to Carrie, a friend of the show, a friend of the beach crew. Everybody should know Carrie, the ref. But I'm nodding my head here, Garrett. I was kind of on the fence. I wanted to be on the fence, but now I'm all in. Like let's get more combines. See, Garrett, you're in Vancouver. Let's get one out there.
No, but I'm not going. Like I think we've made that clear. Like I'm not showing up. Like
no,
I'm not.
Garrett, you should show up so we can gather data about former athletes. That's part of the process. There we go.
Listen, nobody wants to see me doing those tests at this point in my career. Give me a year to prep. Maybe I'll be all right. But now, what are you laughing at? That is not acceptable. No, enough of the peanut gallery here in the background laughing at me. Okay? Yeah, sorry about that. Rude interruption. And it was insulting me. Josh, what do you think your vertical would be? Let's test the coaches. Let's get the coaches out there on the combine and see where they're at and see if it's actually correlating to the team's performance if your coach is in better shape.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be good, Garrett. Like the other day at practice, the guys were, you know how volleyball players just get bored sometimes during warm up and one guy does something and other people are like, oh, I can do that. So a couple of guys were trying to touch the top of the antenna and they were doing it with their approach jump, but then they started to be like, oh, I bet you I can do it with a block jump. And I'm like, I wonder if I could touch the third stripe, Garrett. Like that's maybe
How about the first stripe, Josh? How about just get over the net?
I think I could get to the first stripe.
You get over the net these days?
With an approach jump, maybe I'm not in very good shape. Round is a shape, Garrett, I think, but
you're in a shape.
But like, if the net for men's is 243 or 8 feet, how high is the
Nerd
antenna?
alert, man! Like, oh my god, you know the exact numbers. Good for you.
But like, how long is an antenna? Like, that's pretty high. And these guys were like, I bet you I could touch it. I was like, that's
80 centimeters.
It's up there.
You two guys with your numbers and your facts and all that stuff. I mean, what the heck? I'm in deep here. Comment down below. I need some support for people who don't know numbers and math.
Like, Olivier, during warm-up, did you ever, like, when you guys are doing, like, your block warm-up and you're trying to intimidate the other team, would you go
did
up
that
and swat
every
the
time,
antenna?
didn't you?
Yeah, we used to do that. Actually, in finals in 2008 against you guys, we did it in finals, in gold finals against Rush, against you guys, against Garrett. In gold finals in 2008, we did that. And funny thing is, the reason why we did it is because 2 weeks before we went to see 18U national championships, and we saw the whole Pac-Man team do that. And I mean, basically all of them did it. So we said, hey, we're going to do that as well. So 2 weeks after in Moncton, we went ahead and did it in finals. So yeah, we definitely did it.
Yeah, so we can get into a little bit of the background here between myself and Olivier and Josh.
Yeah.
You'll find this funny. So we're the same age. We're the same cohorts. We played against each other only, though, I think twice ever. Right?
I think
like 2 matches ever.
Three times actually. 3 times. Yeah, because that's right. So
14,
yeah,
15, and 16.
No, 14, 16, and at Western, when you were at Western, and I was at Laval.
Oh, we played.
Yeah, we played, but that was at the York tournament in January.
No. We played you guys at 15U Nationals as well.
No, so you played against another Samurai team. So I was 15U that year, but what we ended up doing is that we sent our best players to play 16U, and we had another team in 15U that year. Against which you played.
Sorry, I got the best player in 16U. Okay.
Well, we didn't win, so apparently it didn't work.
Yeah, you avoided crush on that journey. No, we battled, I think, in a few finals over the years, and I think you got me back when we played Laval. I feel like that was an exhibition game, though, right?
Yeah, it was. So we played against you guys as well at York. We won that tournament at York. We played against Crush in 2009, but you and Richard were both injured that year.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah. So we won those nationals. Was it because you guys were injured? I don't think so. We could have that conversation for hours, I guess, but that's something else. And then in 2008, we played against you guys in finals, and you guys beat us in 3 sets, and which was pretty interesting. You probably tipped for like 75% of that game, and good on you because we did not get any of those tips for whatever reason.
Yeah, I remember that, and I remember us in the huddle going like they got a big block, but like nobody's digging the tip. Like, why am I'm not too proud for this. Like, nobody's watching. I mean, nobody cares. It's not like anybody's going to bring this up 10 years later and talk about it on some random podcast. So we have a long history back and forth playing over the years. But the one thing, it's true. You guys always did that. And it's funny because I don't know if we've ever gotten a chance to talk about it over the years, but you guys definitely always did the antenna thing. Or at least I remember it vividly, and us definitely being like, I mean, we ain't doing that. Like we're not gonna go even attempt that. We would not stack up well against that look. And it is intimidating, I think, at the younger levels for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's why we did it. But at the end of the day, we were only 2 guys that could do it in our team. It was myself and Allison.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I did want to ask, and while we're kind of near the topic about, because there's kind of this legendary figure at least in kind of my circles from Laval, and it is Mondu. And I got to ask you about the journey there because I'm super curious to hear. I don't think we've ever had a chance, somebody who was there, because from my perspective, we go to nationals and we're watching Carl de Grandpré. We've talked about it before, Josh, hitting A balls over top of Mondu, who's in the front row, not getting set. Then the very next year, the guy who had A balls hit over top of him goes and gets Player of the Year in that conference. Can you explain how the hell that happens and what the hell's going on there?
Yeah, I think so. That was season 2012, 2013. It was an interesting season. We had a lot of definitely a lot of rookies that year. And I don't know, Mondu, he just had a great year. I mean, he was passing extremely well. He was a great passer, a great defender as well. Surprisingly for his spike touch, he was or his block touch, he was a very good blocker. I mean, he was very disciplined and he knew his stuff. So yeah, he just had a very good ball control. So yeah, he had a great year in Quebec. And frankly, the average spike touch in Quebec is not like let's say Canada West, right? So he could still do well, but he still proved himself because he did very well at nationals as well. So that was basically it. I mean, the thing when you have Carl and a guy like Tommy in one team, I mean, a guy like Mondu, I mean, he's a great player, but he just ended up being the third hitter basically. Well,
Yeah.
excluding middle players, of course. But yeah, he's a great player, and we went to the same high school. We're 3 years apart, but went to the same high school, and yeah, I have a lot of respect for the guy. He did very well that year.
Yeah, it's funny because the year after we saw the Nationals final, where they, I think, finished second that year, he's getting set balls over top of them. And we started calling left side players on our team Mondu, like referring to them as, hey, we're not setting you at all. We're setting the other guy over top of you. But then what was weird was the next year, calling him Mondu was now like a compliment. It totally flipped in 1 year. We're like, shoot, like we can't do that anymore. We're calling him the player of the year.
Yeah.
Like it was such a crazy story. I've told that so many times about how the guy who never got set turned into the player of the year. Like I tell that to everybody. Like, was everybody was that as special as I'm making it out to be? But like maybe it wasn't. I don't know.
Not for us. I think part of the reason as well is that he was probably not as well known outside of Quebec, right? Whereas for us in Quebec, I mean, he had his time, exactly like me actually. So at Samurai and then at Limoilou and afterwards at Laval. And throughout those years, he got a lot of respect. He did Canada Games actually in 2009 with Team Quebec, and he was well known. So for him to get Player of the Year of the conference, it was not a big surprise. It's just that Tommy, obviously one of the best players of this past decade in Quebec, and Carl, I mean one of the best players in Canada. I mean these past 10-15 years, right? So being with those two guys, he was destined to be in the shadows. I mean that's how I see it. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I always wanted to hear about that because it's, I think anyone we hung out with, it was kind of legendary in our circles. But it's interesting to hear that didn't seem that way on the team.
Yeah, no, it was not. I mean, he's actually pretty similar to you. Good passer, great ball control. His spike touch was.
Are you saying I'm like Mondu? Because from where I come from, that was an insult.
Well, I mean, it ended up being a compliment. So
it's true. It's true. He and I both won Player of the Year. I mean, who's to say we're any different? Absolutely.
Exactly. But yeah, definitely same type of players. I mean, not the highest spike touch, but great ball control, great passer, and overall a disciplined player.
Not the highest spike touch. Back on this physical statistics again, which is another thing I did want to address, and we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. Because Mondu, you're right, and myself even, like I wasn't the massive jumper, but I was up there. But how important, because this thing with the combine, right, and like identifying the bare minimum of what you need. But for the players who test in the highest percentage, like how important do we think that actually is translating into success in the sport of volleyball? Like, is that something that should be a major focus? Are there more important things? Like, for certain players, they build their game up around it for sure. But across the board, is that something we find super valuable, or do we think it's like, it's good, nice to have, but there's more important stuff out there?
I don't know. My personal take is that it's definitely up there. No pun intended there, but it's definitely up there. But it is not the only thing to look at, right? One of the, part of the things I think, made us successful at Samurai was that, we built our confidence first, and then after that, we worked on volleyball, right? We worked on fundamentals after that, right? So we were very good hitters before anything else. And frankly, for, young athletes, and just, teenagers in general, it's just a great thing to do, right? So, to focus on that, to me, it has a level of importance the same way it would have, let's say, in basketball and other sports, right? Or, think about the 40-yard dash, at football. It's, it's highly, it has a great reputation, right? Let's put it that way. And it's highly used. So that's kind of the same thing for me. But then again, there's a lot of other things to look at, and you have to be exhaustive in your testing, or else you'll miss other stuff.
It's funny you bring that up, that you say you built your confidence first. You guys were great hitters, and that kind of fueled you a little bit, and that brought you success. I think as I've aged in my volleyball life, I think I've kind of realized, like, all the stuff that, like, the ideal, and Josh, you'll love this, the idealist, the volleyball idealist, the volleyball elitist, if you will, has these things that you want to check off all these boxes in your kind of ideal volleyball world, right? Like, oh yeah, you want to have good passing, good formation, solid setter, like great serve, like you got to do these types of serves, like, X, Y, Z. And I think it's interesting that we have you on, Olivia, because I remember actually at that 17U tournament that you guys won, you guys were the only team in the tournament who ran meter balls in the middle. And you couldn't stop it. Like, and I remember thinking like, man, like you got to triple it. You have to. And nobody did. I didn't understand why nobody did, but you were just bouncing balls. You either hit to 5 or you hit to like,
we wouldn't get your tips. Probably the same reason we wouldn't get your tips, I guess.
I guess. Right. But it's like, okay, you got these physical guys in the middle, set them a meter ball, let them go to work. Right. Like, why do we necessarily need to, check all these volleyball boxes when we could make up a whole new style and still be successful without all the pieces in place just yet? You know what I mean? And I think you saw that with some of those teams as well you were on, where you're setting an A ball. Who gives a shit? Like, set the guy the A ball. Like, we don't need him hitting a pipe. He's gonna crush the A ball. Who cares, right? Physical, like, get the job done, kind of. Which is something I never thought of when I was younger, right, Josh? I know that's gonna challenge your volleyball elitism a little bit. Like, how dare you?
I think you got to be really extensive in it. Like, I'm thinking of examples because there's so much data out there in like drafts and other sports, right? Like, there's NHL teams who literally will not draft a goalie under 6 feet anymore. Like, they have a profile of what a goalie looks like, and you could be the best goalie in the CHL, but if you're 5'9", they're not even going to evaluate you. So I think, and football players, if you watch, there's lots of documentaries on, like, they have a physical profile that if you're going to play a position, you have to be X, Y, and Z. Or even Golden State's GM once said, he's just like, listen, we know Steph Curry is 6'4", and that's not an NBA body type. He's a great shooter, so he makes up for it here, and here. But if there's a 6'8" guy with the same skill set, the 6'8" guy is getting the job. So I think there's always going to be exceptions to rules. I don't know if people are lazy in their evaluation, but they're always kind of looking for a profile that says this is going to be a right side on our team. And if you walk into a gym and you find that kid, it's awesome. But there always is going to be that exception. It's just it's almost impossible to measure, Garrett. I think that's why we're always looking for the physical profile. So you could send your assistant coach to go watch Samurai at this tournament, and you could say, oh, we got to talk to this left side because they're 6'5", big arm, good passer. And it's like, well, you might be overlooking someone else, or you might be overvaluating them, but they fit what you have in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know why coaches we do that we want to find the shortcut or we want to hack the code, but it feels like every sport does it, but we all know it's not the one be-all answer,
It is true, because like in the club scene and at younger levels, you have less influence over what you're actually targeting and bringing onto your team. You kind of make do with what you got. So some of that plays in more, right? Like, hey, we got 2 guys who can pound. Let's have them in the middle and do that work, right? Or we got, I don't know, a bunch of guys who can pass. Well, let's run this offense or whatever, right? But when you're at the highest levels or higher levels, you have a little bit more choice about what you kind of look for and try to bring in to your program, to your team, or whatever. And I think actually this kind of comes to my biggest pet peeve with volleyball is it's boring, right? Like, if everybody's looking for the same thing and trying to get the same skill set and not bringing in these unique talents and you're really being unique in some way, everybody looks the same, right? Like, is that not, and now you're just competing to who can do this cookie cutter the best. Am I wrong?
Well, I kind of disagree with that. So the way I see it is just, a sport getting to maturity well, if you look at a certain way, in a sense that, if you look at any sort of, industry, any sort of field in general, at one point you see kind of a convergence in terms of the way companies do things, the way people do things in general. Think about cars. They're mostly the same. It's just that the more expensive they are, the faster they are, the more comfortable they are. But if you look at a single category, they tend to be all very similar. They all have, design language, but aside from that, a car is a car, right? So when you think about sports, and that's because there's a recipe that basically works, right? You get more mature, and as you get more mature, people start doing the same thing because it seems to be the best thing according to science, according to data and all of that. And when you look at sports, there's that, I wouldn't say that easy recipe, but, you can converge towards, kind of a, single point that is not necessarily the best point that exists, but the best way of doing it that we know as of today. And, at one point there's always a coach, a player, someone that, comes up with something new that no one has done before. And, using that, thanks to that, we end up refining that sport, right? It's an iterative process, but there is a best, right? It's just that, or there could be different bests, but it's normal to kind of see that convergence. And we see that in many, many fields.
Yeah, I see your logic. I see your solid explanation. And I get that. And you're bringing intelligence to the show. And, we didn't give you the brief beforehand that outsmarting the hosts is just not really a great thing to make me feel good. But certainly you're bringing great points.
It is what it is.
But you're looking at it from a perspective of, okay, I'm trying to be the best. I'm trying to be successful. But I'm trying to separate that. And I've tried to do it with every show that we do is like, hey, only one team wins. But that doesn't define success for your sport or your season or whatever. Josh, I'll ask you, who's your favorite beach volleyball player to watch?
Anders Bowl.
Okay. Why?
I think he does a unique thing where like he can.
Oh, wait, what?
He's very unique in the way he can influence the game.
Right. Okay. Name another player who's fun to watch.
On the women's side, I would say Duda for the same reasons. There's stuff she does that no one else can do.
Yeah, I completely agree. Anyone else?
Phil in his prime. I like Sean Rosenthal in his prime. Like,
how about Karambula?
Yeah, he's okay.
What do you mean he's okay?
We play against him a lot, so I don't like him because he's hard to game plan for because he doesn't do anything awesome, but he beats us a lot, actually.
What do you mean he doesn't do anything awesome? He rockets the ball up into the sky and does like sets over and like he's exciting. This is what I'm saying is like professional sport is an entertainment product. It is not like a business. It is not a numbers game, a profit game. Like what you put out on the court needs to entertain people, right? Even international. Like maybe that's the one place where it's like, no, success matters over everything else. We don't care if it's boring as long as we bring home that gold medal. But when you think about professional career, even university, you get funded based on how many tickets you sell in some ways, right? Like you think about at Western, the football team gets a ton of money because people pay tickets to go to sit in the stands. Who's coming to the volleyball game? Well, not a ton of people. So if everything's the same, if it's less entertaining, I think we lose out generally. We miss out on other ways to succeed. So I think you're right, Olivier. Like, when the way we value things like as a convergence to what is going to be optimal for success in terms of winning and being kind of a championship team and giving your best chance to win night after night. But now that's not my goal anymore. Like I don't care about that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I mean, you have good points there. The only thing is, we have to look at is whose role is it to make the sport attractive for people to watch it or to practice it?
Great question.
And
we have not answered this on the show. We've tried.
Exactly right. And whose role is it to make teams more performant, right? And that scope, I think, it's kind of fluid, right? Because there's a lot of instances, whether, we're talking about, referees and teams and clubs and whatnot. So we'll not get into that. But the point is, I think, those decisions have to be taken by, different groups of people. And, then again, some groups have performance in mind, and I'm thinking about athletes and coaches, and other groups have just the application of the sport in mind, and I'm talking mostly about refs, for instance, and other groups have the idea that the sport should develop and be attractive, and that's a bunch of other people, right? So and what is the overall goal? Well, it's tough to say, but what's for sure is that different groups have different roles, and a coach should make a team as efficient. Well, it depends what the club is. Assuming the club or the team is all about winning.
Why do we assume that, though?
Well, exactly. That's why I'm saying that, right? Because I know not all clubs are about that, right?
No, they are really, Lo. I can't think, like, I've never walked into a room and gone, somebody's like, no, we focus more on looking good and being entertaining than winning. I've never heard that. I would love to.
Well, you've seen NCAA, right? D1.
Yeah.
Have you watched, NCAA D3? NCAA volleyball. And
No.
I'm not saying it's not, good volleyball. There's a bunch of very good teams and very good players in there. But if you look at the league's mantra, and I can't remember what the exact, tagline is, or however you want to name it, but it's really more about, the practice of the sport, about, moving and stuff like that, than about, being being the most performant you can, right? And you've seen, D1, D2 leagues. We have that in Quebec, at the college level. D2 leagues are not about, being, as performant as possible. They want to win, but they, there's a level of compromise they won't do.
Yeah, I think I agree. And Josh and I both coached in the college league in Ontario. But even there, like when you talk with the coaches there in that league, it's kind of like you're hired based on your ability to help your team win, not your ability to help your students stay in school and graduate, and not your ability to bring excitement and energy around your team. Which, now that I say it, don't those two things seem way more important?
You're right.
Like, right? Am I crazy?
Especially at the OCAA level, where that's not necessarily. There are athletes who do it, don't get me wrong, but I think they're the exception. It's not a pathway to the national team. It's not a pathway to playing volleyball for a living. It's a pathway to learn some soft skills, have a great experience, but you're going to start a career very soon. And I think you're dead on here, where a friend of the show, Sam Schachter, starting his college coaching career, and I had to tell him advice that I received from another OCAA coach, is like, listen, it's going to be really hard to have the same roster 2 semesters in a row, because somebody's going to flunk out, or somebody's going to be on probation, and it's sad that that's the state of the provincial league, Garrett, where like, no, I don't think anyone has the same roster 2 semesters in a row in Ontario.
No, they definitely don't. See, to bring it full circle back to the point about physicality and do we care about it, I think I've convinced myself that I care way more about physicality than I ever did. Like I would have said, no, it doesn't matter at all. But from this perspective, I would much rather, imagine, okay, come with me on this journey. We go into a major stadium. It's Team Canada playing Team USA, say. I don't know, whatever. Team Cuba, we're trying to qualify. And we get some 6'11". What was the word you used to describe these guys, Josh? 6'11"?
I don't like the word freak anymore. I like to call good players like unicorns if they're special.
No, you said something else. You said goon or... Gronk. Yeah, 6'11" Gronk out there. And you just out there, I don't know, playing middle, playing left side or something. I would much rather watch a big unit out there just absolutely screw one up in the worst way possible, follow it up with a massive bounce or like an unbelievable play, than 2 plays in a row where like a short 6'3" left side goes up and tools the block line. Like, I would rather see that. I don't even care the result of the game. I want to see some craziness, right? No?
I don't know, because when you guys are talking about like entertainment value, like my mind kind of goes to like and one basketball, and that was really entertaining for like a little bit, but it was kind of a flash in a pan, and it wasn't going to outlast NBA or NCAA basketball, where it just wasn't close enough to the sport to be like long-term entertaining. But for like 2 or 3 years there, it was like, oh, did you see that guy do this?
Oh, you want to bring NBA into this? I'm so glad you did that, because think about the NBA and the varied play styles and the varied paths to success and the speed at which that game changes. Think about a few years ago, what was the dynamic team? Team who hit all the 3-pointers. Now, Exactly. Who won last year?
Milwaukee?
With the big unit just charging down the center, dunking everything, basically, right?
Yeah, but there's still a tendency to converge towards
sure.
A focal point, right?
For sure.
The only thing is, there's a level of volume that volleyball doesn't have, right? That allows the sport to move a lot faster.
Do you mean like people playing it or watchers?
Watchers.
Okay.
Exactly. And I think that level of volume allows the league to have, if we're talking about the NBA, to have, more means, and teams have, more ways to analyze what's working and what's not working right now and in the past few years. And thanks to that, or because of that, depending on how you see it, the league tends to converge towards, focal points. And then it moves, all right, something changes, and then it moves again. But still, that tendency is still there. It's just much faster than, in a lot of other sports.
Yeah, and I, as a spectator, as a fan now, I mean, I have a history with volleyball. I feel like I know it at a high level. Like, so when I watch, I can find things. But I'm also like, fan of dumb stuff like the WWE and dumb movies, right? Like where it's just a promotion. And you look at like where volleyball is headed, unlike where basketball, it's, there's things changing and the trends and how it changes. I'm looking at where volleyball is headed, and I don't like it. I don't love where it's headed. I don't know that it's going to help our game be more fun to watch. Like, because you're right, we're getting this combine, focus on physicality, get these big units, especially on the beach, Josh. Like, defenders now on the beach are getting taller and taller. There's like none of these short guys going up being super crafty anymore. Like I feel like Karambula or some of these other players are a dying breed. And you get these people because now they can hand set all they want. Same thing indoors. Like indoor setters don't have to have beautiful hands. They like you can just be super physical because the rules allow for it type thing. So I don't love where it's going when I'm just picturing that kind of convergence in a direction. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm just me.
Fair point. Like I think your examples are good. I think I see it a lot in female blockers where Sarah Pavin used to be like the only like 6'5" athlete. Now it seems like there's half a dozen or more that are like it's trending that way, right? So,
yeah, like how many beach volleyball teams are we going to put up with a 6'3", 6'4" blocker, 6'1", 6-foot defender, where they run two balls most of the time? Like how much of that are we going to put up with?
Isn't that Olivier's point where like when you find success, that's the recipe? Because if you were going to go help at a tryout right now, Garrett, let's say you're going to help at a 16U tryout and you don't know anyone's name and you're trying to describe to the coach, it was the girl with the ponytail. She's like 5'10", like she's right-handed. She jumped pretty well. That's every girl in the gym.
That's everybody, man.
Yeah.
That's everybody. I feel like we talked about this last week here. I'm like a broken record. I maybe need to change it up and converge to a better point here on this show. Damn it. Do you watch volleyball, Olivier? Do you go and watch volleyball because you enjoy it?
Not all that much, to be frank.
So why not, though?
I feel like I've had too much of it, when I was younger. Yeah, I feel like that's probably why. And I watch some other sports, frankly. But not volleyball, not all that much. I've had too much of it. But I watch, teams I like. I watch people I like. I'll watch the Olympics. I'll watch, special events like that. And I enjoy watching it every time, but I don't, go out of my way to watch volleyball. Definitely not.
Yeah, I think I would say I'm the same. And I feel like that's a common story in our sport, Josh, is that like, think about the hardcore fans of a sport like basketball. It's people who like played D3 or like played in high school and like were done playing and are like watching these players as super fans, right? And I'm not saying that that's either of us because I mean we were pretty high level players. I mean, come on, what are you talking about? But I'm saying a lot of other players who had a ton of it, not really sticking around to really be fans and kind of engage with the sport.
I think even the model has changed. Like in my role, some of my professional development, I got to go to an analytics conference, and the MBA guy was there.
You got to go to an analytics conference.
You want to nerd out with some people?
You must have been in heaven.
It was good. I'm kind of like a fence sitter because I'm kind of like a coach.
Of course you're a fence sitter there, too.
There was like some pure data people there who had trouble like interacting with other people. Like that's how sciencey they were. That they were like, yeah, yeah. Anyways,
all right.
Like they're too smart for their own good. Anyways, the point I was going to make was the NBA guy was there and he was talking about he's from NBA Canada and he was talking about NBA viewership is really the fourth quarter. Like it's very actually rare for somebody to watch a full game, and even the NFL, like their package is like red zone where you just like you turn on that channel and they'll keep flipping the game for you based on scoring chances and stuff. So I don't think that's a problem unique to volleyball where we watch the big events or the special events. I think sports fans in general, like look at baseball. Who's going to watch a regular season game for the Blue Jays in May for 3.5 hours on their couch, right? So, but we'll watch the playoffs or we'll watch meaningful games where, I don't know, Garrett, I don't know how volleyball is going to capture this audience, but it seems like sports in general, the viewer is getting, I don't know, a little bit more passive in what we want to see and we want to consume it in a short amount of time.
I think that has to do with the nature of our sport as well. Like think about in a hockey match or a hockey game, the third period, or a basketball game, the fourth quarter, or a baseball game, the last inning. In volleyball, like it's hard to track, right? Because if it's a 3-0 domination versus an intense 5-setter, the time difference there is huge. It's like almost double, right? So like if you're looking to tune in, it's maybe over before any of the real tense moments happen. Or, okay, I think ideally let's catch the 5th set of that. It's a super tight match. But in beach, it's over. Like before you know you have a good match, it's over. Like the two scoring systems and the progress there, I think, is just crazy. Like it doesn't allow for these kind of, even somebody tuning in near the end, because I have no idea when that's going to be. You know, if a basketball game starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time, I know if I tune in around 9, I'll probably catch the end of the game, right?
Yeah. And even for broadcasters, it's kind of a pain to plan for that, right? You have to plan for stuff that might happen and might not. So how do you work with these people, right? It's definitely a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
So let's solve it here. Olivier, you're a physical guy. You know how to entertain folks. You've brought us some knowledge here. Josh, let's solve this tonight. What are we doing to make volleyball and beach volleyball more watchable for fans, like some of these other sports we mentioned? Do we have an answer, or are we just posing questions and yelling into the void?
Yes.
It's maybe the void.
I even want to just take the easy way out, and I think before we try to fix the TV thing, because I don't think TV is where to start. Like I think beach volleyball is at its best when it has like a cool feel where you're going to show up and you're going to spend the day there and you're going to watch a bunch of matches and there's going to be somebody on the mic or they're playing music. Like I think it needs to be something you feel like you have to be there in person to really enjoy versus it's something you turn to a certain channel and watch. I just think when I think about like beach stuff, I think it's like you're spending the day there and you're watching multiple games. It's not like, oh, it's 7 p.m. on this channel, I'm going to watch the game for, like you said, it could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour 5. We don't know how long the game's going to last. But
well, I agree with what you said.
That festival and that all day thing, I kind of like that.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there. But the thing to think about is, people that will spend a full day at a beach tournament, so the French accent going out there. So people that are spending full days at a beach tournament, they're mostly super fans, right? And at the end of the day, those people are not the critical mass of people that will spend into your sport, right? So while yes, this is a great way to attract people and develop your sport to an extent, if you want to get more money, get more development into your sport, you have to find another way to get money into organizations, and to do that, optimizing the TV online format, the format that requires, basically, that has less friction for people. That's the one you have to optimize, because that's where you'll get more people, especially nowadays. I mean, people are traveling less right now. People are, getting accustomed to watching things online and from their home. Yeah. So, having a format that optimizes that, yes, you might not get, as you said, and I totally agree with you, the best way to watch beach volleyball is to spend a full day watching games, understanding who players are, what they do, how they, their processes over a full day. That's kind of the best way of, of doing it, and enjoying a nice day as well. But to develop your sport, you have to get that critical mass. So developing that online and TV format, it has to be done. I mean,
I think I have the solution.
Yeah.
I think I have it, Josh. So the FIVB has kind of proposed this new top tier, right? And I hate that personally. Like, you're really shutting out access to make it easier for teams to hop in. This is for the beach. But that principle, I think, is still a good one, right? Like, you still want people to know who your top teams are and want to tune in to see them. That is part of it. So what if you framed the tournament in such a way that it gave an advantage? You didn't lock people out of the tournament based on their ranking, but it gave an advantage to the top teams. So you could schedule those top team matches for prime time, and you spend the day with these kind of qualifier style matches to try to build up to these kind of marquee moments in the evening, right? So if you think about, instead of making a tournament that's only the top 8 teams for the World Tour Finals, Now you've got two of your top teams playing at 9 a.m. in a random pool play match, and you can't hype it, right? You don't know who's going to win. You don't know what's going to happen next. Open that up to, say, 32 teams or to 38 teams, to 40 teams, and have 32 teams competing to get into a top 16 situation, where now you're having a top team playing a qualifier up-and-comer who the hardcore fan is behind because they watched them come in, and the casual fan is going, they immediately get the story, right? Oh, you got top player, now you've got upsets. You're kind of building these, setting it up for a big moment, right? Either a crashing fall for the qualifier or a major upset type thing. You know what I mean? I think that would be awesome.
Well, what I really like about that idea is it allows for storytelling. Because where I think I'm bitter, I totally agree with Olivia that like the TV model and like that's the fastest way to reach the most amount of people, and people don't want to travel. I'm just bitter that like even when U Sports had that login, Garrett, I didn't buy it. I'm a guy who like loves volleyball. I run a volleyball podcast. I work in volleyball. I didn't want to pay $14 to watch nationals. It just that didn't seem worth it to me. So I'm a little bit bitter that way. Where when I think about like other sports, like I don't even understand tactically what's going on in UFC sometimes, but when they build the story, Garrett, and this guy doesn't like this guy, or this woman doesn't like this woman, like there's a story there, you get behind them, you watch them train, all of a sudden you're picking sides, which one you want to be a part of. Like I think that's what our sport is missing, is the storytelling, where the sport alone isn't going to stand on itself. You got to be able to get into the story. Even when I started watching tennis this summer, Garrett, because the Canadians were doing well, it's like, oh, this female athlete grew up here, this is her story. Like that got me more into the sport than technical tactical, where sometimes we just focus on technical tactical, and that's not enough. And I think Olivia even said it earlier in the episode. I'll watch people I know, but I don't want to watch just a random game, right? Like,
yeah. I love that. I just made it up tonight. So maybe we need to workshop that and send it over to FIVB, because that would be amazing. Like think about a Thursday evening, say. You know there's going to be one good game of the day. It's a qualifier. They had to win. I mean, playing too many games in one day is tough, but they had to maybe win 1 or 2 games to play that match in the evening. And that they know they're getting a day off the next day. Because that's always the thing with those FIVB beach players. They're like, too many games in a day. When's my day off? Blah, blah, blah. So, we space it out. We know we're going to get, I love it. I do not have a good solution for indoor, though. Like, what the hell are we going to do there?
It's a good question.
Like, how do we fix that?
Well, one thing we touched on a bit earlier was, the fact of volleyball being, not time-based, right? It's point and set-based.
Yeah. What if it was time-based?
I mean, it would make the sport, very different, right? So, it's definitely up for debate. But if we were to find a way to make volleyball time-based, I think we would solve a big part of that issue. That's my take on it. But then again, the same way, the combines have to come with a follow-up. The fact of putting it time-based is not enough by itself, right? It has to be, there has to be a lot of other things around it. Josh, you talked about, storytelling. We talked about, a bunch of things. So it has to come with a lot of things, or else, I mean, it will just be, nothing. It will just be one point that will not, change the nature of the whole thing.
Yeah, this was always my problem with indoor, right? Is like, you change it up, but why would somebody care about like the thing with beach is everybody's there. You got a variety of countries. You got a lot of stuff happening, a lot of variety. But when you're talking about an indoor match, you can't really play, like you're flying a whole team to a location. Like, what are you going to bring everybody? Like, I don't know. So how do people really give a shit about one team or the other team? Or say you have 2 matches in a night. I don't know. Like, how does anybody care?
I think when people, if they think back to the old World League model, remember when like Canada used to host like a pool of 4? Like the Canada games would do really well, but it's really hard to sell tickets to a Finland versus Poland game in Canada. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know how you draw people in without storytelling or some sort of player profile. Like, I don't know. Just saying it's international volleyball obviously isn't the ticket enough to get people there.
Yeah, if you have any ideas, comment down below. If you're still listening, my goodness, thank you so much. So we've solved beach, FIVB if you're listening, which you're definitely not. But if you are, love to work with you. I mean, just call us, let us know. But we've solved that. Indoor, we still need some work. I don't have I have no ideas. So We maybe
It
have
has
to
to be
shelve that one.
around storytelling. It has to be around storytelling. That's the only way. I mean, that's the way I see it. Storytelling, and Josh, you're a big numbers guy, right? We see the NBA doing it very, very well, right? There's always a weird, statistics, being used at games, right? This guy, was the first one to score, more than 5 points between the third and the fifth minute of, the second quarter and stuff like that. And that is basically a record. And building a story around that, it sounds dumb the way I'm saying it right now, but they do it and it works, right? Yeah. And because of that, they have a bunch of talk shows, podcasts of people talking about weird, random statistics that, frankly, in a lot of cases, don't mean much. But people love hearing about that.
Yeah.
People listen to that and they're like, "Oh my God, Stephen Curry is the first guy to score more than 3 points in less than 5 seconds in the third game of the finals of an even year, whatever it is." And people love it, right?
Yeah.
They love it. They're like, "Oh my God, this is a record." And people always think records are being beaten games after games and quarters after quarters, and that's how people see it, and they see a story around that. So no matter how it is, I mean, I'm all about data, by the way, Josh. I'm a big numbers guy. So, you get data, you build a story with it, and frankly, people will get in. Super fans will, and then after that, you make it more accessible for other people.
Well, Garrett, I think this is a callback to an earlier guest. Don Saxton said he doesn't watch NFL football, but he'll do fantasy football. Maybe the hack for indoor volleyball is fantasy sports, where you pick a team and all of a sudden you're cheering for the right side from Serbia because you got to win your pool that week.
Yeah, I was going to take it a different direction. I think that, sure, I'm in. If anybody's got a fantasy volleyball league out there, I'm in. But I was thinking we need to make like an XVL, like an extreme volleyball league that is not a sport. It is sport entertainment, where it is fake, where it is just for entertainment. So they have different spots that they set up throughout the game, like the Harlem Globetrotters style, where you have these different characters and the different things happen. I would watch that 100%. You get a mic, like everybody's mic'd, like they get the mics out, yell at the crowd. I don't know. I would watch that.
Now, I can't confirm or deny this, Garrett, but there was a demo match when I first moved to Toronto at North Beach, and there was a bunch of kids there. It was for school, and the players agreed they were going to play a match that it was going to be tied at 15-all. So they were like, they were giving signals like, I'm going to dive cross, you hit it as hard as you can so I can get this slammy. And then at 15-all, there was a gentleman's agreement that we were going to play straight up and you were going to try to win. But for the first 15 points, it was like serving bombs, trap blocking, like all this stuff, just so the kids would think that volleyball is this awesome thing versus like side out, miss serve, side out, miss serve, and I think that was maybe leads to what you're proposing here.
Yeah, I think there's a market for it. I mean, imagine indoors where you're like, hey, you set up, hey, we're going to run this cool set and it's going to fool you. Like you're going to go the complete wrong way and he'll have no block. You better bounce it, buddy. Like show off that's the show off moment for the crowd. That would be amazing. Like, are you kidding me? Like, people watch warm up when they know it's a toss and they bounce it. Like, imagine you frame that around a game. I'm in. I pay for that.
TJ just setting one-on-O's to all these guys during the game. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. To the big right side guy from Brazil, or France, I think also has a big guy on the right. Those guys absolutely unleash. I would pay to see them on a 1-on-0 mid-game, or not. Maybe you have triple there and he purposely gets slammed. I don't know. I love it though.
Yeah, it does solve a part of the problem, right? Because a lot of people that don't watch volleyball don't realize how physically taxing and intense it is, right? So doing that, you're creating highlights. You're creating an opportunity for people to see things they wouldn't see otherwise, right? Because a good volleyball game technically doesn't mean it's fun to watch for non-volleyball players, right? Yeah. So creating that, you're just creating and generating a lot of hype.
Okay, so the three of us are going to make the XVL, but we're not going to tell anybody it's fake. Nobody's going to know it's fake. It's going to be like the WWF back in the day. Like, it's going to be like, is it kind of real? Is it not? It's like, well, hey, I don't know. Hey, we don't know. It's volleyball. Well, It's volleyball entertainment. So we're going to... We got to be clear on that. Oh, gosh. Well, I think if anybody's being realistic, they would think that that's an awful idea, but welcome to Sharp Cuts. Like, welcome to Sharp Cuts. And Olivier, that's kind of it. That's the show. I mean, we've made a bit of a habit of telling our guests at the end of the show what order they were requested in and responded. And this is the first time, Josh, I think, we were 1 for 1. Right?
Yes.
1 for 1. Olivier, you were our top choice. Highly recommended, accepted the request. So thank you so much. That's got to fill you with confidence. And I said that before I ask another question. So your first time on Sharp Cuts, what did you think?
It was awesome. I liked it. Frankly, I mean, a lot of fun. You guys are fun. Great topic. I mean, talking volleyball. Obviously we're volleyball passionate. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, listen, and thanks for kind of playing into the bit where I ask a question hoping to get a compliment and actually giving a compliment. I appreciate it. Some people don't. Some people just take that opportunity to chirp us, and that's equally accepted. But thank you so much for joining us. If you're still listening, I don't know what you're doing. Get out there and play some volleyball, because if volleyball's boring, listening to it is definitely even less exciting. But thank you so much for joining us. Up in the comments, 5 stars, subscribe, all that great stuff. And that'll do it for this one. We'll see you next time.